The Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review will come to order. Good afternoon. In response to the COVID-19 emergency and to protect the public, we are limiting our gatherings and adhering to social distancing and face covering guidelines. Let me see if I've got a quorum yet. Not yet. So we're going to start as a subcommittee as soon as we see more members come down, I will ask our consultant, Mr. Steppenshaw, to call the roll, and then we'll establish a quorum. But today is our last budget hearing before the summer recess. Of course, we're going to do that pretty soon. And the great news is that it is almost all, not all, but almost all of the trailer bills what we'll take up today are almost all of the trailer bills that we're going to need to act in order to make this budget that we have already adopted. There are 11 bills on today's agenda. And as a reminder, the budget bill that is associated with these, we passed on June 28th. And let me go through very quickly what these trailer bills are. They make the statutory changes necessary to implement many of the major components of that June 28th budget agreement. Our consultant, Mr. Steppenshaw, to please call the roll and let's establish a quorum.
Senators Skinner.
I'm here.
Skinner here. Nielsen. Nielsen here. Caballero. Cortese. Dolly. Dolly here. Durazo. Durazo.
Here.
Durazo here. Eggman. Eggman here. Grove. Kamlager. Laird. Laird here. McGuire. Melendez. Min. Min here. Newman. Newman here. Ochoa Bogue. Pan.
Here.
Pan here. Stern. Wykowski. Wykowski here.
All right, so we have established the quorum. Budget process this year, because of the enormity of this budget, it is the largest budget we've ever adopted. And for example, as we've talked about before, it has the highest level of funding under Prop 98 for our K through 12 schools, for example, and so many other components that we've had a number of budget hearings where we have been adopting trailer bills in order to put the statutory things in place to deal with the appropriations we made. But the fact that we've been doing it in these different hearings, I think, can sometimes cause folks to sort of dilute the incredible enormity of this and the transformational aspect of this budget, which I personally am just very, very happy, pleased, and thrilled about. We will hear the 10 trailer bills and the budget bill junior, and then we will have an hour of public comment, and after that, we will vote on the bills.
I'm pleased to present on the 11 bills included in today's hearing. The governor signed SB 129 on Monday, which provides the overall architecture for the budget agreement between the legislature and the governor and reflects California's shared priorities and our shared values. The final budget, as Chair Skinner, you've mentioned, it has investments in childcare, in transitional kindergarten, higher education. It boosts healthcare access and affordability, increases in services for Californians with developmental disabilities, invests in major service expansions to help CalWorks families back on their feet, and supports aging Californians, among many important investments. The budget also represents the largest recovery package in the country. AB 164 also reflects the final broadband package, as was mentioned, for which I will speak more in detail later during the AB 156 presentation.
And with that, we will move on to, AB 156, the broadband bill.
Yes, Erica Lee with the Department of Finance on AB 156, the Communications or Broadband Trailer Bill. This bill reflects the state's broadband plan to achieve equitable statewide access to high-speed broadband internet service and proposes a $6 billion investment to expand broadband infrastructure and enhance access by constructing an open access network and by funding construction of projects that connect unserved households in remote areas to that network. Specifically, this bill provides $2 billion to be allocated through the existing California Advanced Service Fund, or CASA program, to build broadband infrastructure projects for communities to connect to what is called the middle mile, or the state's internet backbone. $1 billion will be allocated to rural areas, and another $1 billion will be allocated to urban areas. The bill provides for the California Department of Technology and the Public Utilities Commission to contract with a third-party administrator. This third-party administrator must have deep experience in building a network and will work with with CDT and the PUC to locate and design the middle mile infrastructure, primarily on state-owned rights-of-way. The bill includes language that CDT will contract with Caltrans for the design and construction of new state-owned middle mile infrastructure. It includes a position at the Department of Technology to serve as a single primary point of contact, as well as accountability and reporting language, including establishing a broadband advisory committee, which will be established, composed of representatives from CDT, PUC, Caltrans, the Department of Finance, the Government Operations Agency, and 4 ex officio members appointed by the Assembly and Senate. Other broadband funds that are necessary for the state's broadband plan are included in the BBJ, as I previously mentioned, and those funds include $3.25 billion to build a state-owned open access middle mile. The $2 billion to fund the last mile is included in this trailer bill. $750 million for a loan loss reserve account with the California Advanced Service Fund to help local governments or nonprofit organizations secure financing for construction of last mile broadband infrastructure. And with that, I'm happy to respond to any committee questions.
All right. Any comments or questions about broadband? Yes, Senator Dawley.
Sorry, Madam Chair. There's only 2 of these bills I really wanted to focus in on, and we've already talked about fire, and the next one is broadband. So my question, in my district, there's not a lot of detail, at least I could find in this, about actually how this is going to work. I understand that the utilities are not our friends. They don't use our resources, and they don't hook up people, and they only go where they can make money. And so I understand what the process here is as far as trying to do something that actually serves the people. So in my district, 100 megabytes per second download is far more than most people actually have. And in this bill, that's going to be the standard for for served or underserved. 25.3 seems more like an accurate standard for truly underserved. For the last mile, rural funding formula was 100 megabytes per second. The threshold chosen for prioritizing distribution of that 100 billion, and not the 25.3. So I think that it's going to, the truly underserved are going to try to meet a higher standard than what a standard of 25.3 would be. So can you kind of give me some thought process about how you got to that calculation?
Sure, Senator Dawley. I will turn that question over to one of my colleagues who's been working on broadband.
Sure, Mark Window, Department of Finance, and so as I think Ms. Nee's already noted, the majority of the funding for this proposal comes from the ARPA funds, and so to a certain extent, so they have the 100 down certainly is part of the what the feds would like us to pursue. But in general, working with the Public Utilities Commission and other industry experts, 100 down is it's a good future-proof measure, and it's something that's technologically achievable. So when we talk about our proposal, we've got the middle mile, we've got the last mile. And so, but the target really is to identify first those who are unserved. And so when you reference the 25.6, I think it is, that's a service that's not fast enough to allow for the multiple users the way that I think people have now become used to or have had to get used to during the COVID pandemic. And so the idea for the 25 down is that anything below that is not it's not functional enough. And so as we fund projects, we want to make sure that the projects are able to operate at the 100 level.
Well, I would just share with you that this is an area I've worked a lot in, and 100 megabytes per second versus 25. So that means that anybody that has 25 or is under 100 is considered underserved. So that means that they have something if they're 25 or above. So if you're 25 below, if you have nothing, you would be happy to have 25.3. And that's my point, is that most of this money is going to go to areas that have service, but just not 100. And that's going to carve out a whole bunch of people in areas where they don't have it. So I'm concerned about that policy and how it plays out when we actually spend the. I understand we got to get this on the ground, we got to get it done because this is federal dollars. So I think that's something we should look at maybe in some follow-up language, because we're going to miss a whole bunch of people that are not served, and we're going to speed up people's services that already are served. I think that's a problem with this with this proposal. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the middle mile. When this is going to be a government-ran internet service. This is done by the funds that are coming from the federal government and from the state funds that we're putting in. And all the monopolies that we have, the 5 big monopolies that don't help us out, which is AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and all the big utilities out there that have all this infrastructure. And we're going to put the middle mile in, but who are we going to hook up to? Are we going to try to hook up to their source and then offer it to their customers? I don't believe they're going to be wanting to participate in letting us get on this backbone. The backbone is not owned by the public. It's owned by private companies. And if we're going to put the middle mile in and try to hook up to that and go out and serve unserved communities, I don't see what the incentive for them to let us hook into the backbone. So how's that going to work?
Yeah, so part of what the trailer bill does is it provides for a third-party administrator that has broad experience in this industry, and so, but the intent is really to build out or to make sure that we have an open access middle mile that ties into that then last mile communities can tie into, and so in terms of the way that the industry and that currently has infrastructure there, certainly we don't want to build something we don't need to build, right? And so we would work with industry, we would work through our third-party administrator, and try to use what's available if we can get long-term access to it. But to the extent that that we're unable to get that, then we would need to we would need to go ahead and build out the system there, so that in the end we have a middle mile system that reaches all of the communities in the state.
Well, I would say that we are going to put middle mile right alongside a private provider's middle mile. I have it all throughout my district, and it's something I've been very frustrated with the utilities. Is I've said it 3 times on this floor. We have the I-5 corridor, goes all the way from California to Washington, and there's fiber laid, lots of fiber laid right up through there, and a lot of it along the railroad lines as well. And they don't allow me to tap into it. So they're going to allow you to tap into somewhere to hook up my community because you have middle mile next there. But you got to connect it. There has to be an on-ramp and there has to be an off-ramp. To get the on-ramp, you have to take it from some private company's backbone. That's the concern I asked earlier. But you're basically saying we're going to build our own network right next to theirs, and that somehow is going to serve our communities.
Thank you, Senator Dolly. Senator McGuire.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And just on the issue of broadband, First and foremost, I want to say thank you to our colleague from Bieber and share his frustration in regards to lack of access for high-speed internet. I'm a firm believer that this pandemic has really shined a spotlight on the massive disparities that exist, whether it's in a small town in Northern California or our inner cities in downtown LA, when it comes to the issue of internet. Millions across this state are on the wrong side of the digital divide. And I'm a firm believer this project's legacy will be, it's the largest economic development initiative that has been launched, in particular for rural California, in over a century. So bottom line is this. I share the good senator's frustration about middle mile. But here's the truth in rural California when it comes to middle mile. There are literally thousands of middle mile lines that run through rural California. The incumbents own the access to that middle mile. They force some of the poorest communities in America to pay exorbitant fees to tap into them. And those communities simply can't afford it. Which means we have huge swaths of this state that are unserved when it comes to not just high-speed internet, but even dial-up. So is it ridiculous that this state is going to have to build a second line, a redundant line next to incumbent line? You're damn right it is. But we're not in it for the profit. This state is in it for the people. And more competition will bring down the prices for everyone in this state. There's $3.25 billion for middle mile, that high capacity fiber line that is the highway of what will be one of America's largest broadband projects. Know that the governor, the legislature is very focused on bringing on an experienced nonprofit to be able to oversee it. And rightfully so, it is going to have a worse first strategy. We have to focus on those who don't have service first, then go to those who are underserved. And the reason why we have to have $2.75 billion for last mile is to allow for communities to be able to build out their own systems, to be able to connect to that new middle mile that would be built by the public. I'll say this. This budget has changed since Chair Skinner and, in particular, Pro Tem Atkins and Speaker Rendon got involved. On the last mile alone, there at least, out of that $2.25 billion, at least $1 billion will go to rural communities. This is a game changer for last mile. Right now, there are $0 that Trinidad or Crescent City, Weaverville or Hayfork can, $0 available for them to be able to build out their own broadband. Number two, we've increased the loan loss amount from $250 million to $750 million in this budget. What is the loan loss amount? It will allow rural cities and counties and underserved metropolitan areas to be able to bond against the $750 million to be able to build out their system. It's a game changer. There's going to be $50 million in an upcoming allocation for technical assistance grants for rural communities to be able to cover environmental and engineering. We're learning from mistakes in the past with large public projects and doing a waiver for CEQA within the Caltrans right-of-way. We should be applauding this effort right now. The last thing I'll say is this. The goal of this project is not just to connect people, but it's also to connect our most critical infrastructure that makes our communities thrive. It's going to connect federally qualified health centers, rural health centers, hospitals, thank God, K-12 public schools. There are communities on the North Coast where kids were spending $200 to $300 every friggin' month to access satellite internet. It's unacceptable. And if we're going to continue to rely on the private industry to do good and put good over profit, we're going to be waiting another 50 damn years. So let's get our act together. Let's get this thing built. Let's connect our libraries. Let's connect our firehouses, our hospitals, and our kids to the internet that they deserve. There are over a dozen other states that have done this. We are the land of opportunity here in California, and it's about time that we deploy this high-speed internet to the most unserved and underserved residents here on the West Coast, and we respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Well done. Any other comment or? Good, not to follow. I am going to go to the public comment portion of our hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I'd like to just support 3 of the bills on today's agenda. First, AB.132, the post-secondary education trailer bill. We thank the committee and the Senate and staff for removing Section 67 from that bill that we opposed. We also are here to support AB.144, the tax credit bill for studio construction. Thank the staff of the committee and Department of Finance for their hard work on that important trailer bill. And finally, AB.156, we are also in support the broadband bill. We could not have said it better than Senator McGuire. This is a critical bill, and it will lead not only to increased access to the internet for thousands of people in California, millions probably, but also create a lot of good middle-class jobs as well. Thank you so much.
My name is Paul McGavin from Wire America. I have just started my timer, and I want to say that you have some excellent resources in the state of California who are experts in broadband. We have been so for the last 6 years, and we work closely with Bruce Kushnick from the regulators. They had a very important lawsuit that points the states on exactly how to solve the digital divide by recovering not just this $2 to $3 billion. You have on the table between 12 to 15 billion you can recover from those incumbents who are claiming falsely ownership over those fiber optic backbone lines. It is not theirs. It was paid for by the public on our phone bills from 1993 to the present. Don't believe that propaganda. Don't let them off the hook. That is a public asset. You can connect to them. You just have to have the courage in order to do so and force them to do so. You have some recent publications by Mr. Kushnick called Explosive, Unredacted Report by California Commission about AT&T California. That is your state public telecommunications utility that does manage that public asset for the benefit of the public. This is what you can do. You can force access to that. Use your money wisely. It opens up all that money now to connect the communities to the backbone because you have access to it. Another article from him in June of 2021 gets the money back from those who created the digital divide, big telecoms, Verizon, AT&T, et al. This is in your public record. You just need to pay attention to it. We gave you excellent information to every senator and every assembly member just yesterday. We will be setting up meetings with you to educate you on exactly how to do this.
Madam Chair and members, this is Erica Hoffman with the California School Boards Association in support of AB.156, the broadband measure. And I will just associate myself with the comments of Senator McGuire. I think he got right to the point. This is necessary. It's needed. Our students need it in order to ensure that they have access to all the educational programs they should be able to access. So we appreciate your support, and thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Melissa Romero with the California League of Conservation Voters. 3 of the budget trailer bills being voted on today, AB.133 on behavioral facilities, AB.140 on housing, and AB.156 on broadband, all include fairly broad CEQA exemptions. CEQA is one of the few legal tools that allows the public to meet both environmental protection and public health needs, particularly for low-income residents and communities of color. And year after year, we have seen a concerted effort to gut this foundational environmental law. The current pandemic also highlights that we must carefully analyze and reduce the environmental impacts that projects may bring in order to protect the most vulnerable residents throughout the state who are extremely susceptible to a myriad of public health threats. Policy change such as CEQA exemption should be debated through a publicly accessible policy discussion through the full legislative process with sufficient time for the public to engage in a transparent debate. Each of these budget trailer bills represents important issues which address social, economic, and racial inequality in California, and the significance of that is not lost on us. But we cannot go without stating for the record that CLCV and a number of environmental organizations are concerned about the number of broad CEQA exemptions included in budget trailer bills, such as AB 133, AB 140, and AB 156. Thank you for the opportunity to share our comments.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and members, Mark Smith on behalf of the Origins Council, representing 600 licensed and ancillary cannabis business members operating within the historic cannabis farming regions of California. We want to appreciate the considerable amount of work that went into SB 160. We are extremely supportive of the timeline extension for the launch of the Cannabis Appellations Program. We believe this additional time will help ensure a successful rollout of this precedent-setting program. With respect to provisional licensing, we do appreciate and support the revisions that ensure compliance benchmarks are broadly applicable to all jurisdictional approaches to CEQA compliance. However, we do have some grave concerns that the timelines for these new compliance benchmarks continue to be unrealistic. Provisional licensees are statutorily denied the right of appeal, and under this measure face a greatly increased risk of licensing interruption or loss due to no fault of their own. We request that the legislature closely track progress on the implementation of these compliance benchmarks and take preemptive action as necessary to ensure that licensees that are actively and diligently pursuing the requirements for annual licenses are protected. In closing, our organization continues to advocate for a comprehensive assessment of the state licensing framework to pursue structural reforms that would lower barriers to entry for aspiring small business and small farms seeking licensure. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment today.
Good afternoon. Tracy Ryan on behalf of the Rural County Representatives of California in support of AB 140 and AB 156. Particularly with 156, we are supportive of the provisions implementing the statewide middle mile, as well as the changes to the California Advanced Services Fund that defines underserved areas as those without access to 25.3. AB 156 also prioritizes funding for those areas with less than 10.1. Finally, we appreciate the innovative provisions that set forth the Loan Loss Reserve Fund that will allow private-public partnerships to fund broadband projects in our rural and urban areas. Thank you.
Hi, Marvin Pineda on behalf of La Cooperativa Campesina de California. We want to thank Senator McGuire for all his efforts in the broadband bill. La Cooperativa Campesina serves all the farm workers in hard-to-reach areas that a lot of people have forgotten. So we thank you for being a champion for those farm workers and for those that have often been
left behind. And finally, defenders and CNPS strongly objects to the CEQA exemptions in AB 133, 140, and 148, and even more so in AB 156, in which there's a sweeping CEQA exemption for the $3.75 billion broadband project. We, of course, support broadband, but we do not believe that there should be CEQA exemptions. We would align our comments with those made by Melissa Romero with CLCV and Brandon Dawson with Sierra Club. Thank you.
Thank you.
Line 308.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. Joshua Pube on behalf of Communication Workers of America District 9. CWA looks forward to improving the overall broadband proposal to ensure California workers are utilized, especially those with broadband experience and high labor standards are adopted. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Dean Reavers with the Rural Caucus of the California Democratic Party. First of all, I'd like to thank and express my admiration for Senator McGuire's remarks in favor of 156, and we would add our support, our strong support to that bill and the needs of the rural counties for broadband. Thank you.
We understand that many of the things in these budget bills, the legislature is trying to do really good things for communities. But it doesn't make sense to us to do those things in ways that actually put them in harm's way and also leave those very communities out of the discussion of how these programs that you're talking about or these services are going to be implemented. And for that reason, we would urge you to be very careful. We hear all sorts of excuses about community needs, emergencies. We hear that every year. There is a reason CEQA is the law of the California land. There is a reason why this was put into place to actually prevent harm to communities. And we would hope that these exemptions would not move forward as part of this bill package.
Thank you, moderator. Now let's come back to the committee, and we will begin our process of adoption on these bills. We'll now go to AB 156, the broadband bill, motion by Senator McGuire. Please call the roll.
AB 156, the motion is due pass. Senators Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Nielsen? Nielsen, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Cortese? Cortese, aye. Dolly? Durazo? Durazo, aye. Eggman? Eggman, aye. Grove? Comlager? Comlager, aye. Laird? Laird, aye. McGuire? McGuire, aye. Melendez? Min? Min, aye. Newman? Newman, aye. Ochoa Bogue?
Aye.
Ochoa Bogue, aye. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Stern? Stern, aye. Wachowski?
Aye.
Wachowski, aye.
All right, that bill's out, 156 with 15 votes. And with that, we will conclude the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee.